Hi everybody. Well, this kind of feels a little bit like a terrorist setup. I got this backdrop behind me, and I got, well, the flies don't look like a terrorist backdrop, but I got lighting in front of me. I'm waiting for someone to bind me up and torture me and tell me to pronounce something bad to America. Well, that's not going to happen. Not if anybody knows me well enough. So listen, I'm here. It's been a long time since I've made some videos. Over the next couple of days, I'm hoping to make 4 or 5 videos that I can post to my website, that I can share with Whiting, that I can share with Solares, that I can share with a bunch of other things. Unfortunately, I am at a very, very, very busy point in my life, and I appreciate the patience everyone has shown with me. I have 184 teaching days left in my career, and then everything changes, and I get to take a lot of time that I spend working, which is like 70 plus hours a week, and I get to devote it to a lot more time, fly time. So anyway, what's this first video all about? Well, this video is kind of a play off of some videos I've already done. I already talked about how to tie a parachute fly, the fact that I love parachute flies, and I think I've also talked about bar emergers. Well, necessity is the mother of invention, and when I make wings for certain parachute patterns, like a sulfur wing is a pale gray, and I have lots of different materials to choose from. I have rabbit's foot, I have high-vis or EP fibers, I can use deer hair. I have lots of different options that I can go with. But I've always struggled to come up with a really good winging material for flies like March Browns, for brown drakes, in other words, or Calabatus, any of the flies that have speckled wings. And I started playing around with some ideas, and when I looked at the Coq De Leon feathers that Whiting puts out, the fine barring and patterning in these is the closest thing I've seen to a March Brown wing, to different ephemera types of done wings. And I said, how can I possibly incorporate this? And the pattern you see in front of you is what I've come up with. So for flies with speckled wings, I think Coq De Leon is an outstanding material to use to make a parachute post. Now there's a problem here. The problem is that if I attempt to make the post solely out of Coq De Leon feathers, the post, I think, will be too weak and too flimsy. So I wanted to beef it up. So I've been playing with this for a while now, and I tried deer hair, I tried high-vis underneath it, and then putting the Coq De Leon around it, and I've come up with a system now that I kind of like, that I'm happy with, that I'll be happy to fish and happy to be successful. Look, I fish parachute flies a lot. They're very successful. It was a matter of coming up with a winging style that I was comfortable with. And this particular winging style with the Coq De Leon, I think, is a winner, and I think it works out really well. So what I'm going to do now is tie a parachute fly for you, but I'm not going to record every single step. There are other parachute patterns on my website, fliesforfish.com, that you can look at for the actual techniques of winging a parachute fly. What I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about how to use the Coq De Leon. How do we get this into the wing in a really good way? And then I'm going to talk about using the Coq De Leon for another winging material for those same type of flies in emerger patterns. All right, so step 1, the parachute fly. Step 2 will be the emerger patterns. And again, I'm going to not show necessarily every single step here, just the steps that are new to the patterns that are being tied. So the first thing that we want to do is tie in a tail of Coq De Leon feathers or fibers. So here's the deal. You know, I usually like to use the Ultimate Bobbin by Ekich, but the problem is that I'm out of tan 8/0 thread, so this thread won't fit on that bobbin. So in the meanwhile, I will use the only tan thread that I have, and what I like to form is, you can see it here, a double loop. Whoop, I pulled out, I'll put it back in again. I like to form a double loop of tailing fibers because I want to make it a little bit wider than just a single fiber. And if I need to widen it up a little bit more, I can just twist it. But what that'll do is it'll splay the Coq De Leon feathers a little bit more than the others. As you can see, I've been working on tying a bunch of these flies lately, so I have some fibers off of this one particular feather that I could pull, and I probably like to cut somewhere in the neighborhood of about 6 to 8, maybe a little bit more fibers. These are big flies. The fly I'm tying here is on a size 10 extra long nymph/dry hook. This particular hook pattern I'm trying out, or this particular hook manufacturer, this is a Allen hook, and what I'm looking for here is I want to work it, and they're fun to tie on. I have no problem tying on them. Now I have to get them out in the field and work them. Unfortunately, the March Brown hatch is over and done with around here for a little while, so I'm going to have to wait till the spring for this particular pattern, but I will get an opportunity on some other flies. I'll fish some nymphs on this hook and get a really good idea. Alright, so what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to splay these flies, these feathers, which I just was able to do by pulling that tail, or that folded over piece of thread, right up between the fibers. And yeah, you know what, this is not going in a shadow box, so it's a little bit splayed, and I can reinforce that splaying by going back down to this particular point, and I can pull one clump of fibers, come over the top, pull the other clump of fibers, come underneath, and there we have two very good strong splits. Okay, so that gets the tailing section of this particular fly done, and that's step one. You know, I'm not going to go too nuts getting out those little 8th graders that aren't where they belong. Okay, now the next step is to make my wing on this particular fly, or the parachute post is what it comes down to. And with this particular wing, what I'm going to use is rabbit's foot to start. Now, first off, rabbit's foot will definitely help the fly float, which is a very good thing. If I didn't even put hackle on this fly, rabbit's foot will float beautifully. Now, I don't want if you notice, the clump that I took out is really thick in here. I don't want, as part of the parachute post, my post to be too thick. So I pull out a lot of that under fiber there, and then I try to judge about how high I want the post to be, and err a little on the short side, because what the fish is going to see mostly is not the rabbit's foot. They're going to see the Coq De Leon feather. So this is about right, period. It's not short, it's not long, it's pretty good. So I tie that in there, then I fold it back in here, I pick it up. I don't have to go too nuts. I want to try to jam the thread right up against the base here. This is 14/0 thread, so it's going to take a number of turns to do exactly that. Then I pick up the entire clump of rabbit's foot and I start passing my hook through, or the thread through and around the base here, and go up pretty tall, much taller than you would normally go up. Okay, you will see why in just a couple of minutes. I like to go up and down twice. The reason is I go the first time and I wrap around the hook shank a couple of times, because now I can't lose, well, it would be very difficult to lose this base wrap, if you will. And then I go around and back up and down. Oh, caught that twice on the shank, wish I hadn't done that. Even go up a touch higher than I was. And I will stiffen this stem up a little bit more too, in a couple of different ways. Okay? One way that I'm going to stiffen it up is by putting a little crazy glue on it. I'm a big fan of putting a little crazy glue on parachute posts. So I put it right on there. One side. And the other side. Okay, good. Now, the next part of this, and we're still not stiffening it up all the way, is to pick a fiber, and it doesn't really matter how long, we'll pick one feather, it doesn't really matter how long the fibers are on a particular feather because we're going to trim them. I picked this feather, which is nice and long, okay. I like to strip off the more dense and after shaft feathers that are down here and the down, if you will, on it. And I don't really care whether it's right side up or upside down for reasons that you'll see in just a couple of minutes, because I'm actually going to twist this feather around the shank. Okay. And then normally I would fold this straight up along the post. I'll do that when I get to the hackle fiber. But for now, I got that done. All right, so now what I'm going to do, look, I want the shiny side to be to the outside. So I start wrapping it around, right around this post. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the shiny side facing out, and take the time, if you will, to work your scissors through here as you wrap it up on the post. Get those fibers free. Don't let them mat up. Okay. And then once you start going up the post, go back down the post. Yes, go right over where you wrapped before. Okay, working it with your scissors so those fibers, the individual fibers on the feather, become free. Don't worry about the fact that it looks like a mess right now or that it looks particularly large. All right, I want to come under there, and now I come under and I wrap. I don't even care if the fibers go to a little bit to the bottom of the shank. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. Cut this off. I don't care that it's a mess. Right now you have what looks like a mess of feathers around this particular post. But this is not the hackle. This is not a parachute hackle. I want the speckled effect that this gives. That's what I'm after. So now I'm going to come up underneath this. I'm going to pick it all up, bring it up, and start wrapping around. Get a couple of secure wraps in there right up against the base. This would be a little bit better with 8/0 thread, but like I said, I'm out. So I chose to stick with the right color pattern so I could actually fish this fly a little bit rather than choose the wrong color. Right? So I'm going to go up and I'm going to go down. You can see what I'm working right here. And now you can see that post having been formed. Okay? Just like before, once I get pretty confident in it, I'll cut these two off. I don't care about those. A couple of wraps around the base. Good. And now look at all the beautiful mottled coloring that I have in that wing. It looks really, really, really good. Now you'll notice that the tips are a little bit long. If I was doing a March Brown or a Green Drake, I can get the right size tips and leave the feather uncut the way it is. But if I'm doing a fly that's a little bit smaller, like a March Brown, I'm not worried about it, because you know what? I've often used high-vis, and I just trim the high-vis. So I trim the hackle. I don't care. There is no high-vis product out there. There is no Antron product out there that has the delicate barring that the Coq De Leon feather has on it. So to me, I think this is the best posting material for these speckled wing mayflies that I have seen. You could do this with lots and lots and lots of different mayflies. I think I mentioned Calibatus, a bunch of the Drake type mayflies, the ephemeras. It'll work really well for that. I'm going to put a little bit more crazy glue on here. What it serves to do is really stiffen up that post, and I like that the post is stiffened up a bunch. And the next step, every time I create an order for whiting, I always ask for cream necks because I think cream necks are the greatest. I've got like 4 or 5 of them, or 4.5 in my drawer. This color to me, particularly for caddis, but also for March Browns and so on, is just a great color to use. So now I'm going to look through the neck and I'm going to find myself a nice Cree hackle of the right size, which I'm almost done doing. Dun, 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 dun. Sometimes you got to go to the side of the neck. The ones that I was looking at were fantastic. The problem is there were not one fly feathers, and this is going to be the last of this that I tie for a while. So here we go. There we go, perfect. One of the feathers from the side of the neck. It's a great use for it with a parachute. And I'm going to have to do this on this side of the hook, but I will show it back to you. We always want to put this so that the shiny side faces the parachute post. Notice I first latch it around the shank. Now I'm going to work it up the parachute post. And then back down. And now what you do is fold this guy right back up along the post. Okay? And what you're doing is you're really, really, really stiffening up this post. Now you wouldn't want to use a small tippet casting this thing, because by having such a stiff post you will absolutely twist your leader. Now the last thing I want to mention to you, if you look at this post, this is a thick post. So when you pick out the feather, you want to be a little undersized. You don't want to pick an oversized, and that's one of the things I was fighting for with that. Okay, so as far as dubbing goes, I really like to take the Cucci Nastasi dubbings. I live here in the East, and you'll notice that it says Hendrickson Stenonema back then, Vicarium. And I also always mix a little of what I see in the bug. I usually add a little pink to this. I always add some Antron, and then I'll put that in. So now what I'm going to do is wrap a dubbing body, and I don't think you really need to watch that. Alright, so body is fully formed, tail is splayed, hackle's ready to go. Wrap down, 1, 2, lift up the one before it, 3, lift up the one before it, 4. As you go around this base here, try to pick as many of the fibers up as you can, make them part of the parachute hackle. Weave up through it, and now the reason you went up so high before is you have a nice stiff region on this post here on which to do your whip finish. Flip off the rest of your hackle under here. Touch of crazy glue where the whip finish is. I really like to reinforce this. The worst thing in the world is to create a fly and then have that fly fall apart while you're fishing. Alright. I actually put a few too many drops on the front there that you can see, but anyway you look at it, great looking wing for all of those speckled mayfly type patterns. Hopefully you get a chance to tie some of these with the Coq De Leon. It's a great feather. It makes beautiful effects, and it covers niches with feathers that other feathers can't do. Alright, so enjoy, do really, really well. Next up, bar emergers with Coq De Leon to use that barring effect with emergers and the wings that come out on an emerging mayfly. One of these days I would like to get a whole bunch of really, really experienced fishermen and fly tyers together at a show or wherever, and I'd like to ask one simple question. what do you think is the most important thing in successful fly rotting? I'm not exactly sure what the correct answer is. I don't know if there is any one thing, but for me, what I've learned is that where in the water column your fly sits is really critical. If you have a great looking fly and a wonderful presentation, but the fish are feeding 6 inches below the surface, and your fly is only on the surface, you'll pick a few fish, but you could have done a lot better. At least, I say you, me, I could have done a lot better. So I like to make sure I have the right layer in the water covered, be it the surface, the bottom of the surface, the meniscus, if you will, down 6 inches from the surface, the bottom, fishing a nymph, in between, fishing a flymph like a Lysin ring nymph. And to me, the most deadly combination that exists during a hatch situation is the dry dropper technique. And what I love is if it's a caddisfly, I like to fish a parashuck caddis or parachute mayfly if it's a mayfly hatch, and either a bar merger if it's a mayfly hatch, or I like a taboo caddis or a graphic caddis or some kind of flymph if it's a caddisfly hatch, a LaFontaine caddis kind of thing. All trailed off the bottom. In my experience, the bar merger will outfish the dry significantly during a hatch. And many, many times when you think that fish has taken your dry fly, it will be stunning to learn that when you get the fish in, even though it sure looked like a dry fly rise, it's the bar merger that's stuck in the corner of his mouth. So without any further ado, let's talk about this bar merger. I think I have a video up on my website already of how to tie the bar merger, and I think I extolled its virtues in that particular video. It's a fantastic fly. It's a brilliant fly. And what do you expect? It's designed by Dr. Barr, who's a Colorado guy, a dentist, and he clearly knows how to problem solve. And within his great pattern, I've kind of put a couple of different slight little tweaks here and there for the specific conditions that I fish under. I don't think it makes it necessarily a better fly, but it is modified for our conditions. I would never, ever, ever suppose to say that I made a better fly than him. But it does work really well. So the first thing you're going to do, as with any bar merger type pattern, is you're going to make a tail. And you don't really care too much about the tail because you're going to lop it off in the middle anyway. So I take some Coq De Leon feathers because they're nice and mottled and variegated and barred like a nymph would be. And I just lay that right on the top of the hook shank. I like to grab it there and work it down the bend of the shank. You know, people talk about why a rotisserie vise might be considered better. And one of the things I love about rotisserie vices, you can see it right in here. You can rest your hand and hold everything so that the fly is perfectly, the fibers are perfectly flat on top of the hook shank. All right, so we have step one and all that beautiful tailing, and I just take my scissors and go whap, and they're off. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is tie in the abdomen of this particular fly, and when you work this in there, I actually got a little ahead of myself there, but that's not a big deal. I like to put, for a March Brown, a little bit of a brownie rib. The dubbing I use, I think, could have a little bit more brown in it. Pull that out. Did a little too hard there. Could have a little bit more brown in it. And I accomplished that by putting in the copper rib. Plus the copper rib will help it sink a little bit and give it a little bit of segmentation. So color segmentation, a touch of weight to get under that surface. In case you don't know it, March Browns are one of those one of the minority type mayflies in the sense that they actually shed their skin under the water column and pop through it there. So a wet fly is really effective for a March Brown hatch. So that's another reason why I picked the March Brown series with the bar merger and the dry fly. All right, so again, I use the Cucci Nastasi blend. Some Antron added to it, yellowy brown, and because this is the nymph section and I like to catch air bubbles, I am going to twist this on my own. I didn't bring my dubbing spinner in here with me, so I'll do it without, the old-fashioned way. Catch it on my finger, loop it over as you can see, spit on my fingers a little bit, and start twisting. Dun 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 dun. All right. Usually by the time I get to that point, it's good and spiky, which I think you can see that it is. All right. Now what I want to do, whenever I tie a body like this, I always work backwards and forwards. So I'm working my way down to the tail, and then I'll reverse, start working my way forward. Now look, I like thinner flies. I do not like overdressed flies, but the March Brown is a beefy bug, so I don't exactly want to put on something out of the quill-bodied, quill-Gordon type of super thinness, super sparse. I don't think that matches the natural in any way, shape, or form. We've got to put a little heft on this guy. So here we go. And I'm a little disappointed in that, but there's a nice easy way to correct it. So I'm kind of glad I did it, because I can show you how to just make up for that. If you see the body, it's beautiful, 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 and it kind of drops off a little bit. No biggie. Just put a touch more dubbing on there, and I'm not going to go through the, oh, that's the wrong dubbing. I'm not going to go through the process of actually twisting it on again and spinning it and so on. I should say I'm not going to go through the process of spinning it on. I'm just going to twist and tie it over the top there. Alright, good. And now on the back of my dubbing needle I put a little patch of Velcro. As you can tell, I was working with some deer hair before. Okay, ready? 1, 2. Try to make them about as even as you can. Again, this is not going into a shadow box, so I'm not really that concerned about it. One trick that I learned watching a Davey McPhail video is to actually continue and tie a couple of extra turns, and it stops all of the slippage that you could get there. So thank you to Davey for that little tip on his video there. I forget which one I was watching when I saw it. It was a salmon fly video that I saw it on though. Alright, so now, wow, stabbed myself. Now what we're going to do is get into how to wing this guy, and it's a little different than you might expect with your typical bar emerger. First off, one area where I differ a little bit from Dr. Barr is that I like a little bit webbier feather for my wing case than he uses. He uses dry fly parts, and I will sometimes, but I tend to like the webbier parts. So here I cut off a bunch of these fibers, trim, and you lay them in right on top of the hook shank. Okay. Right on the top, spread them out good and wide. Look at how I got those guys spread out. Alright, I wrap that down. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just wrap a thorax that is the color of the dun, which means I get out the same dubbing I used before. A little pinky fawn, tan kind of dubbing. And this I do not spin because it's not a nymph, it's a dun, or the dun phase. You'll have to forgive me, but I haven't tied a bar emerger on this hook in quite a while, so I might have too much or too little dubbing on this here. Okay. A little too little, but I'll put a little bit more on right now. Okay. There we go. I can see the antron in this, which is always a good thing. I think antron helps catch fish. Some people might hit me for saying that, but in my experience it does. And the past few years of my life, I haven't gotten to fish as much as I used to. That all changes when I retire in 184 more teaching days and somewhere around 10 months. But I'm doing better than I used to do. So a big part of that doing better is fishing these bar emergers off of the parashucks. And particularly, I did great on a March Brown Hendrickson hatch earlier this year. I got multiple fish better than 20 inches. And I do believe that these Coq De Leon feathers had something to do with that. Alright, so now I pull it over the top just like you're tying a nymph. Sorry, I slipped on that. Go over just like you're tying a nymph. Now I just got done saying that this is a beefy bug. So I push these guys back, and what I notice, I'm going to trim the fibers, but if you look here, there's kind of this hollow area up in the top. I don't like that. I would like to fill that in because, again, this is a wet fly that emerges. So what I'm going to do is cut off some more fibers. And even though it makes for a slightly bulkier head, I'm going to put those fibers right in there, trapping them down. And now I have that little hole filled in. Okay. Tie in my head. I tend to be a little more concerned that my head is going to last than I am that it's super small. 3, 4, 5. Pull tight. And then just like you trim the tail, you're now going to trim the wing. And what I like to do personally is come to an area a little behind where the wing case comes in, because on this particular bug the wing is going to be a little bit longer, and I trim right there. Okay, and that is the sprouting wing of the March Brown that you see coming out, and it's just kicking right up off of there. It's speckled, it's mottled. It was a good job of imitating that emerging mayfly pattern. Okay, I don't think it's necessary to lay right along the body. On the profile, I want the fish to see the wing just starting to pop, and as it's being fished in the water, the pressure of the water will pull this down a little bit. It'll look just like that in the water, and that's just what I'm looking for on that particular wing. Just trim this out a little bit there. There we go. Alright, bar emerger, Coq De Leon wing, to get that barring effect that I think is a very important triggering characteristic when these fish are feeding on it. Okay, I'm going to trim out just a little bit right there. There you go. I think that looks a little bit better. Alright.